Good morning and happy Mother's Day. Mother's Day honors mothering, that special commitment to nurturing a child which a woman makes and carries out as best as she is able. And since all of us have had at least one mother and wouldn't be here if we hadn't had a mother, not only a physical mother, but a mother who nurtured us at least enough that we're here at all, then Mother's Day is seen in this culture as a universal holiday. Its statistics are kept like Christmas. Most meals out, most phone calls, most flowers, most generous outpouring of sentiment. It's too bad that life isn't quite that simple, but it's not. We're not all effusively grateful for our mothers. Some of us are grieving our mother's death. Our great need for nearly infinite amounts of nurturing in our young years makes our feelings about our mothers complicated. Nor is mothering always all that it's cracked up to be in the Hallmark section. Sometimes it's hard, thankless, painful, and some mothers are also grieving their children's death, or their children's absence, or their children's choices. What's a realistic minister to do about all these emotions? Because you may not have noticed this, but unlike, say, Christmas, Mother's Day falls on a Sunday every single year. Over the years, therefore, I have become especially appreciative of nurturing. Not just mothering, although that is, shall we say, the mother of all nurturing, but everything from the way friends look out for each other, to the stresses and joys of nurturing professions, to the devoted care some folks give their parents. I'm especially thinking of nurturing writ large this year because in a couple of weeks I'll be conducting a memorial service for Kevin's 5th grade teacher, a woman who turned him back to school after a disaster of a 4th grade year and set the stage for secondary school success. William and I did our best to nurture that boy, but he needed something different from somebody else at that point, and he got it from her, and it meant the world to us. Not even half of us are ever called to motherhood, and even then for less than half of our lives, but we're all called to be nurturing people every day of our lives. Whether nurturing chosen after long deliberation and lasting for years, or the kind impulse of the moment, it's nurturing. I'm thinking, for instance, of the man who opened his arms when a little girl ran to him last week, and knowing that it's unusual for little white girls to make a beeline into the arms of a black man they don't know, investigated further and found her imprisoned family. I'm thinking of 5th grade teachers and their colleagues everywhere, and aunts and friends and nurses. I'm thinking, for instance, of a poem by Naomi Nye, a Palestinian-American poet who was once stranded in the Albuquerque airport a few years after 9/11, and who wrote, "After learning my flight was detained 4 hours, I heard the announcement. If anyone in the vicinity of Gate 4A understands any Arabic, please come to the gate immediately." Well, one pauses these days. Gate 4A was my gate. I went there. An older woman in full traditional Palestinian dress, just like my grandma wore, was crumpled to the floor, wailing. "Help," said the flight service person. "Talk to her. What is her problem? We told her the flight was going to be 4 hours late, and she did this." I put my arm around her and spoke to her haltingly. "Shudawa, shobit we say?" The minute she heard my words, any words she knew, however poorly used, she stopped crying. She thought our flight had been canceled entirely. She needed to be in El Paso for some medical treatment the following day. I said, No, we're fine. You'll get there. Just late. Who is picking you up? Let's call him and tell him. We called her son, and I spoke to him in English. I told him I would stay with his mother till we got on the plane and would ride next to her. Southwest Airlines. She goes on then in her poem to tell how Southwest provided lemonade at the gate, and the lady brought out a box of Palestinian cookies and offered them around, and the poet noted that everyone took a cookie and ate it and became covered with powdered sugar, all the same. She ends her poem, "They took the cookies. I wanted to hug all those other people too. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost." In the end, not everything is lost, because we human beings have a nurturing bone in our bodies, almost every one of us. That nurturing bone is never strong in some, and it's broken in a few, but most of us can find ours and use it and make meaning in our lives from it, if not always poems. It's not all we do, most of us. We also create, produce, clean up, imagine, relax, dream, and sometimes all those things are in conflict with the time and space and energy of nurturing. It's not easy and not always pleasant to have others' dependence in the palm of your hands or heavy on your heart. For balance and wisdom, we turn to religious writings, which often tell us to be compassionate, that's the feeling tone of nurturing, without being specific about the how-to. It's probably a matter of the fact that the hand that rocks the cradle has not held the pen until just lately, or the brush or the chisel. However, there are good hints on nurturing, even in the most austere of scriptures, none of which is more austere than the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is one of humanity's oldest and most popular books of wisdom, having almost as many translations and interpretations as the Bible. Its title and authorship are as evocative and enigmatic as the text itself. When the title is translated to English, it's usually rendered "The Way and Its Power," but a more accurate translation would be "The Classic Book About Virtue and the Way Things Are." The author's name, Lao Tzu, means more or less "the good old boys," which suggests to Western scholars that the author, who is sometimes said to have been born old and lived for 1,000 years, is mythological, and the text compiled from wisdom sayings in 2nd and 3rd century China. 2nd and 3rd century BCE China. The text is enigmatic, the ancient language difficult, and while all translations are interpretations, to some extent the Tao is almost completely dependent on the mind and the heart of the translator. It's a screen on which a translator and then the reader can project his or her own needs and wisdom. And that might have been just what Lao Tzu had in mind. So it is that you will find not only the Tao Te Ching in a bookstore, but the caregiver's Tao Te Ching and the parents' Tao Te Ching and the Tao of leadership and the Tao of Pu, and on they go. There is, as of now, a Tao of nurturing. Here's a couple of chapters on that subject in honor of the day. The Tao is silent. It fills no space. It is like the area enclosed by the pot that makes the pot useful for carrying water. Good nurturing is like that. Good nurturing is a container that holds the situation and does just what is needed, but no more. Too much talk, too many offers of help, too much bustling around starts filling up the space in the pot. And while nurturing often meets some of the needs of the nurturer, if it's all about the nurturer, then it's all wrong. So of course some words and some help and some activity is just what the other needs. If we're not talking and bustling, we can discern. It's what I want to do for them or for me. And what therefore do I need to do for me to keep my balance? The sturdy 2-year-old who bellows, "Me do it," is making an appropriate demand of his nurturer. Grown-ups receiving care are often too polite or too ill to verbalize their needs in that exact way, and those who nurture therefore must notice what's going on and ask themselves, is my caregiving not only making the container, but filling the container? Whether it is our child or our teenager, a client or a patient or a sick friend, is it about them or is it about me? The way I most often remember this these days is when I go to visit my parents, who still live independently with a lot of help, mostly from my sister, and when she needs a break, I go. And I tell myself on the airplane, slowing down to the speed of 85. Everything takes more time. And there are walkers to put in the trunk and hips that don't work so well anymore, and there's not much hurry anyway, because, well, my weeks with my parents are exercises in not being about me at the speed of my life, but about them at the speed of theirs. And there are ways in which this is profoundly refreshing and very educational. Among my parents' continuing gifts to me is the opportunity to pat my ego back into appropriate size and shape, to be the container for our time together and not fill the space. Chapter 2. The second hint that the Tao Te Ching has for the caregiver is that it urges us to go with the flow and accept what is. This is a way that Taoism and Buddhism differ markedly from the more heroic Western religions, which tend to see the world as something that should be improved, to be more godlike and perfect and good. But they think about things differently in the East. Good and bad are labels, and never pure labels, as a symbol of the yin and yang makes clear. There is light and dark and good and bad in everything. Things don't need improving. They just are. Struggling with what is to make it better often does not make it better. The struggle is too often like that carnival toy, that woven tube you put your fingers into, and you pull, and the more you pull, the tighter the thing goes around your fingers, and the harder it is to get out. You all seen one of these items? I should buy one so I can have it as an example. It is such a good example of life. The more you struggle to get your fingers out, the harder the tube grasps your fingers, and then imprisons not only your fingers, but the tense and struggling mind behind the fingers. Only by putting that mind aside and relaxing is it possible to free yourself from that toy. Even the best sorts of nurturing, that newborn baby, say, that chosen, wanted, longed for, labored for child, even that sort of nurturing can be really, really hard. Other kinds of nurturing, helping a roommate who's sick when you have a big presentation to make in the morning, say, or setting limits with a teenager who really ought to know better by now, or dealing with a parent when you have life demands of your own. Those kinds of nurturing especially come with that why me component, a this was not a part of my plan idea, or it's just not supposed to be that way. This causes us an extra kick of pain. It causes us to want to pull and struggle with that tube that has caught our fingers. But the struggle only makes things harder. We already have the lost sleep, the anxious words, the changed plans. That's enough suffering. We don't have to make more for ourselves, but we mostly do. The Tao Te Ching says, it is all the way it is supposed to be. It is all in some large and mysterious way okay. The Tao Te Ching and many other sources of wisdom, even the mystical sources of the West, say, do what you have to do, but don't make it worse by fighting it. Easy for her to say, I heard that. And I know, actually, that putting aside that extra kick of pain is one of the hardest things we do in caregiving. We experience real grief at how this situation is different from what we had expected. There are real losses in caregiving and nurturing. Denying what is happening and how it affects us is just as foolish as wallowing in it. We not only do what we have to do, we feel what we have to feel. And then we can relax and look for that spacious place in this container where we can be at peace with what is and do what needs doing. As you review in your mind caring possibilities, the seriously ill child, the partner with dementia, the parent who can't drive themselves, the friend with depression, you may be thinking that finding peace with what is and what needs doing would be impossible. But it's not. It's just hard. I've sometimes found that place as a mother and a daughter, or as a minister who was needed at an inopportune time. Even more vividly, I've seen you find that place, many of you, some in the midst of terribly difficult situations. I tell you it's possible because we don't usually find things that we're not looking for, and this peace and no struggle is worth looking for. It's worth practicing on the small things. The well parents who only need help getting into the car will only not always be that well. But if I've learned to be fully with them in that challenge, I'll be better prepared for the next challenge, and I will be at peace in the end with that one too. And the nurturing of others that we do, our family, our friends, the big-time caring or the sympathetic smile to the person bagging groceries, the carefully thought-out care plan or the instinctive rescue in emergency. These moments of meaning and humanity make up all that is our lives. Let's hold silence together for a few minutes. And I invite you to call into your mind's eye those who nurture and have nurtured you, and those who you nurture, our mothers, our children especially. Holy One, whom we know in our own loving and being loved, help us to be grateful for the love we've received in our lives. Especially on this day, remind us of the love we've received from our mothers, stepmothers, foster mothers, adoptive mothers, mothers-in-law, grandmothers, and from aunts and sisters and friends. Remind us of those children whom we have mothered in whatever way. And call us to the urgent work of mothering our world. We take a moment to remember our mothers and our children and those who have given us special nurture. And I invite you to name them aloud in love and honor as the chime sounds. We also remember Sarah Maley, who is home and here this morning after a complicated recovery from knee surgery, and Dick Bailey, who in the last 2 weeks has endured a broken leg, a pacemaker insertion, and gallbladder surgery, all at the age of 91, and his daughter, Diana, who is with him. May all these named know peace, love, and healing, and may you all. Peace be with you.